Will we kick it off this week with notes, or we going a little less structured, or?
Still having issues. So it's been a while. Anything you're curious about, Jacob? I can help answer.
Anything? So yes, but I may have gotten the answer to this from the collection of chats and stuff. So it looks like when we do roll out superfluid staking, that's going to roll out first on the Atom Osmo pair, and then we're going to roll it out to other currencies. Is that right?
Yes. Well, here I think this would be. I think we're at a place where we can start leaking what superfluid would look like, but essentially, you know, the which pools get to become a superfluid pool is completely up to governance, and governance gets to choose. Essentially, there will be two things that governance gets to choose for superfluid. One thing being which pool gets to be a superfluid pool, and then the second part being, all right, for let's say, for example, you have for every one GAM token of a LP token, you get one Osmo, right? But maybe you don't want to give the full 100% Osmo value that's underlying in the GAM token, just so that you could be a little bit on the safe side while we're rolling things out. So governance also gets to choose, what actual percentage of the underlying token will count as staking when you do superfluid. So those two things, I believe, are governance adjustable parameters, and essentially, I believe means that governance will have to basically choose the first pool to basically designate as a superfluid pool. I think it does make sense that the largest pool, which is the Atom Osmo pool, gets that position. So, yeah.
That's really cool. Wait, I have a kind of a future question. I assume that the next big feature is going to be mempool encryption. Is that a correct assumption? That after superfluid, we're going to start pursuing protecting the mempool?
I think we're gonna have to kind of see first. I would like to at least complete superfluid launch before we start talking about what the next steps are. Just because this is kind of a big deal. But yeah, I think we will have more updates once we have superfluid launched and ready. And yeah, you can also talk about some of like the UI stuff around superfluid. How, like, from the user's perspective, you're expected to go superfluid once superfluid is ready. Also, I feel like I heard Eddie. I don't know. Are you here, Eddie?
Yeah, I'm back.
Oh, nice. Wonderful.
My Android just like froze on me when I tried to join.
Well, welcome back.
Thanks. Can we invite ChandraStation up here? He was gonna. Thanks for joining in, everybody. Sonny, I know you're exhausted, and Josh, you too. You just did East Denver, yeah?
I did, and that was a lot of fun. It was a massive crowd, and yeah, got to talk about Osmosis and more specifically like the app chain features of Osmosis. Why the fact that Osmosis is an AMM that's also a chain allows us to do kind of crazy things that you wouldn't be able to do as a smart contract on a platform, for example. So.
That's fun.
That's a really important comparison. I'm talking about that more and more, like as we build out more products in Cosmos. I think that there's not really yet a widespread recognition of how much more flexibility you get when you're building a chain.
Exactly.
Yeah, people don't really pull that distinction enough, I don't think. Right on. Are you in Berkeley now with the team, going on the grind?
Yes, I'm in Berkeley. I delayed the flight a little bit just to make sure we can ship before I head back to Korea. The team's been basically on like we have this like war room essentially set up where everyone's just sitting there getting stuff done. I've been the person to head back, head to bed a little bit earlier. We've seen people stay up till like 4, 5, 6, if not later sometimes. But yeah, I think it's really taking shape. I'm really pleased with the UI at the very least. I think um, I tweeted this yesterday, but I do think it's gonna be one of the most like frictionless like liquid staking experience that exists out there, and not just Cosmos and whatnot, but including ETH. Like I think as long as it's like if you know how to LP and if you know how to bond your LP tokens, you will have no issue using Superfluid. Let's just say that.
Got it. We need to make some how-to LP videos now, just to get everybody on the page.
And I believe the testnet is up right now. So we are working basically to get the front end, Superfluid front end working for the testnet. I don't think we'll be able to do it today, potentially tomorrow, but yeah, I don't know if I'm allowed to, share the front end on the testnet before the launch or not. But if I'm able to, I'd love to kind of get more people to try it out, try different things. If you're gonna break something, please break it on the testnet. Please break it now. So maybe it is a good idea to, people to try out the front end that's connected to the testnet, a Superfluid testnet.
Totally true. The testnet is for breaking. You break the testnet, that's great benefit to everyone, actually.
Yeah. And yeah, please break it. Sunny, I feel bad for your hair if something does break, but better to find something that breaks during the testnet than mainnet. But I mean, we feel pretty good about it, I think.
Awesome. I'm glad you guys feel good about it. I have a lot of confidence in everybody's head going down and just kind of emerging with something amazing. So props to you guys for going in on the war room. Chandra, are you there?
Yeah. Thanks for having me, guys.
Yeah. Thanks for coming, man. You guys have had a lot of growth lately.
Yeah, it's been crazy with all the new networks launching and validating on multiple chains and working in partnerships with a bunch of different networks. We were just on the EVMOST community call yesterday, actually, so a lot of familiar faces in here.
Nice. I was going to let you talk a little bit about your craft drop that you have coming. Or did it already happen? I'm not sure.
Yeah, no, not happened yet. We actually are getting a lot of questions about, when's the airdrop and some confusion on who's eligible and what networks to stake on this and that. So I actually wrote up something on GitHub that I didn't think anybody would find because Jacob from Notional is helping build the chain, and he asked for more details about the airdrop, and someone from one of the Osmosis chats, I think it was CosmosHOSS, found it and made a tweet about it, and there's a little bit more clarity on there. So I think one thing we're definitely going to be doing is coming out with like an official blog post that highlights everything in detail, and we've added some Genesis validators to the list who are also the bonus is applicable for them as well. So yeah, there's a lot of confusion right now, but it will be cleared up soon.
Nice. Well, congrats on that. It's pretty cool to see validators starting their own chains and just like the growth of this entire eco happen like this.
Yeah, it's definitely been a crazy ride.
Yeah, there's been really serious time dilation, right? Like since what I think it was June 1st last year till now. It feels like blink of an eye.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. Sorry, Josh. I know I was co-host. Can we invite the star Jason up? He's
Yeah,
from
absolutely.
our admin staff. He was going to help rap about some of the things going on in the community.
I don't see any requests, so if they could request speaker,
Jason, could you raise your hand? I know on the community DAO or support lab, they're pushing through this live chat feature pretty soon. It's a little delayed because of Superfluid staking, but very, very soon.
Do you mean a troll box for the UI or something else?
Well, they got like this knowledge base going for FAQs that are pretty, I don't know, significant. Sorry, trying to do too many things. They got a knowledge base going, a bunch of FAQs that can answer like all the questions from just how to LP, like how to set up your Kepler wallet and how to do things safely and without like a scammer interfering. Yeah, but they also have a chat widget that's really, really cool that's just going to pop down on the bottom. I don't know if they decided if it's going on the main UI or support.osmosis.zone yet, but yeah, so people won't have to ask questions on Telegram and counter all the DMs and the flood of the scammers that they get every time they just say help. So we're basically, they're training separate staff from our Telegram altogether to just like operate, and they've been battle testing it for, I don't know, 2 months now.
That's really cool. I mean, just to be able to get out of that deluge of like, hey, if you give me my seed phrase, well, I'll give you a whole. If you give me your seed phrase, I'll give you a whole gold bar. It can fix all your problems.
Yeah, Jason, welcome aboard, bud.
Hey, thanks.
You're a little new to the admin crew, yeah? Yeah, gotcha, bud.
Awesome, thanks.
Yeah. So how are you enjoying being in the admin crew? What's going on? What's good?
Well, technically, I've still got a Fiat job. My last day is on 7th of March. So I handed my resignation in on Friday, and I'm just really amped. I'm starting officially with Osmosis on the 11th.
Nice. Well, congrats.
Yeah, congrats.
Awesome, thank you.
Good stuff. I know it was life-changing for me to go from just being an excited community member to knee-deep in Osmosis like life.
Yeah, I think, I posted a picture on Twitter of, I took a photo during the launch party, back when there were like, only a few people on watching it. I thought I was like one of the only ones. And since then, I never thought I would be so involved and excited about Cosmos, and Osmosis is really awesome. I use it every day. And I'm just so stoked that I have the opportunity to, do what I have been doing, but more officially, if you can call it that, like helping people and just trying to share the knowledge that I have gained, trying to onboard more people, do what I can,
Absolutely.
Hey, Eddie, want to talk a little bit about what's going on with the bridge stuff?
Yeah, I was actually just about to move into that. I don't know if everybody here has been to the Discord lately. There's a new channel called Bridge Discussions, where we've invited basically all the potential bridge providers to submit an RFP and talk directly with the community. So if you have any questions, go check out the Discord, find that channel. So far, we have RFPs from Wormhole, Gravity, Umi, Axler, and Nomad. I think SifChain was interested, but we don't have an RFP from them yet. We were going to do a panel today with those that submitted an RFP, but because the team's got their head down and moving forward with Superfluid right now, we pushed it back to next week. So March 2nd on YouTube, we'll have a panel with Sonny and members from the different teams to kind of discuss what's different between, what sets them apart from each other. That way, everybody in the community can have the information they need to make the best decision possible. It's a pretty big decision, so we're trying to make a big deal out of it. Jacob, do you want to?
Yeah.
Say about bridges?
Hello. On the topic of the bridges, really looking into like the ownership structures of those. And what I mean by the ownership structure is like, how do I put this? If we look at the Gravity Bridge, I'm pretty sure that the small group of people that kind of bought in or invested earlier than the airdrop may actually be able to compromise it and potentially even working on an alternative proposal. I'm going to keep that like mildly under wraps. Just kind of haven't confirmed with the people who suggested it to me that it's time to like bring it out, right? And I kind of do want to like just jump in, but what I will say is that, were we to do this, it would have an extremely, extremely distributed, stakeholder base, and thereby hopefully making it not a Canadian bank account.
Is it Pranay? Is that how we say it?
Yeah, perfect.
You're from the Nomad team, right?
That's right. Yeah. So I wanted to come up here and say hello to y'all and thank you for kind of making this RFP process, because it's been great to engage with the Cosmos community, but also kind of get our word out there and talk about Nomad a bit. But one question I've gotten as I've talked to some of the folks that try to engage with this process is the Discord is a little chaotic and it's tough to keep track of what's going on. So I think a couple questions are, is there going to be a Commonwealth thread or somewhere where people can leave more thoughtful and long form responses, as well as like having a rough timeline for what this is going to look like? Like, are we going to do the debate and then go straight into a vote, or kind of what is the timeline for making this decision? Because it's quite important, as you mentioned.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think I got your Nomad's RFP yesterday, so I'm going to go ahead and put all those together and put a Commonwealth post up so people can leave their long forms today. As far as like after the panel, like when the vote's going to be, I'm not certain. We were going to have someone from the Osmosis support lab put together some graphics to kind of show like the differences between them. And I think Stevie might be working on a summary list also after the panel that we kind of want to circulate for a couple days. We could potentially have something up the following Monday, maybe.
That sounds good. I think a lot of people that went to ETH Denver are down horrendous right now because it was like a super spreader event, basically. And so having time, or at least putting out a timeline where people can put it on their calendar and keep track would be kind of helpful. And really do appreciate y'all opening this up to the community and having folks like us be able to participate.
Do you mind if I ask a question about Nomad?
Sure, go for it.
All right. So like I kind of got into real quick over the past week, like my specific concern with the Gravity Bridge. So Cosmos chains, they're driven by the stakeholders, right? So the stakeholder set is not well distributed. You have political risk akin to literally, what I mean by a Canadian bank account is that like any authority globally could push on that limited set of stakeholders and compromise potentially even the entire bridge, everything in it. I was just curious how you guys were handling that issue.
Yeah, good question. So unlike the other bridges, Nomad is not a validator bridge. It's not a purely externally verified system. And what I mean by that is doesn't require getting a quorum of 67 out of 100 validators in order to move messages between chains. Rather, it is a minimal externally verified set. There's one updater that's permissioned in the contract that is more akin to like a roll-up sequencer that is able to basically annotate or add their signature to state routes and send it between chains, with the caveat that if they do anything invalid or try to commit fraud, somebody in the watcher set can then submit a fraud proof on chain and stop that. So there's no way to kind of buy your way into the system because it's not a POS system. But I think your question is more around what are the ways in which the system can be co-opted by people. And I think probably the surface area that's most important to consider is who has the ability to govern and upgrade the contracts. And right now, the Nomad contracts are governed by a multi-sig, the multi-sig governor that is kind of in docs and transparent for everybody to see. It's not the terminal state, it's just where we began when we deployed the system. And the plan initially is to expand the governor set in the multi-sig and then move to a more decentralized governance system. But there's no way to buy, there's no Nomad token, there's no way to buy assets and purchase your way into the set. And I don't know if that solves or if that addresses your question about it being like a Canadian bank account.
Well, I mean, yeah. Can I ask you a question about the watchers real quick? Because it does sound like the design that you guys are pursuing is, let's call it distinct, right? And maybe you can tell me if I explain how this works to you correctly. So what I think I'm hearing is there will be contracts on both sides. So like a WASM contract in Cosmos and an EVM contract on ETH. And watchers are, and maybe actually now I've hit my first question. How are the watchers selected?
Yep. So quickly to address the first part. So right now the contracts are written in Solidity. As soon as CosmWasm is deployed on, say, Osmosis, we can deploy WASM contracts on there and have it directly connect to Osmosis. But initially, while we're waiting for that, the plan would be, as part of this RFP, the plan would be to route assets through Evmos. And so Solidity contracts would be deployed on both Ethereum and Evmos. And then I think we could work with the Evmos team to build some type of Osmosis module to immediately send those assets over to Osmosis using IBC. So the user would not have to submit an additional transaction in the same way that flows would go through Gravity Bridge or something. But to your question on how watchers are selected, right now the Nomad core team is running both the updater and the watcher. And one of our sprints is to kind of have a Docker container or something that people could run for the watcher daemon. Everything is written in Rust. The code base is open source. You can go look at a repo. We just haven't done the work to make Dockerize this and make it easy for people to run. But the idea is initially governance would be able to enroll watchers that are aligned with the channels that the watcher would be kind of maintaining liveness and monitoring. So in the case of the Ethereum to Evmos or Ethereum to Osmosis set, we would want watchers that have deep relationships with the Cosmos ecosystem and align the social incentives initially. But over time, similar to how the governor multisig would be decentralized, we're trying to think through plans to also enable the watchers to be selected by a larger set. And the reason, I'll say one more thing, Sunny, the reason the watchers need to be permissioned is because there is a griefing vector if anybody is allowed to be a watcher right now. And this is because the replica, which is the contract deployed on the destination chain, cannot know what happened on the home chain. That's the nature of cross-chain communication. So if anybody as the watcher could say, there was fraud, you should disconnect from this channel, then it could be a potential liveness issue. And until we develop light client protocols to make this more deterministic on the replica, the watcher set needs to be chosen to where they're not going to be folks that grief the replica.
Thank you so much for the detailed explanation.
Totally. Sunny, were you going to say something?
Yeah, I mean, so I was just gonna say, like, so if the this watcher set is permissioned, because of this griefing vector, how is that different than like just having a permission validator set as well? Like, what's the benefit of? And you still need these watchers to be sort of honest, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So if you have, say, one updater and 5 watchers, if the updater colludes with all of the watchers and says, hey, I'll pay you, so there's an amount at stake that we could basically steal by committing fraud, and I will split it with you like whatever 100 divided by 6 is 17% each, and to trade off that you guys will not report fraud, then the updater could compromise the system. But the idea initially here is that the updater on Ethereum side will be run by the Nomad core team initially, and then transitioned over to somebody who has a vested interest in making sure that the Ethereum updater remains honest. And then a watcher set that is composed of folks selected from the Cosmos ecosystem that are not likely to collude. So initially, that is the security guarantee that we're going with, but the improvement over something like a POS validator system is, one, you can't bribe your way into the system. So one of the feature/bugs of POS is as long as you have enough coin votes, you can make your way into the system and compromise it. And that actually is somewhat worse than a POA system like Wormhole, where you cannot buy your way into the system. So then what is the advantage of, say, one updater and 18 watchers over something like Wormhole, which has 19 guardians? Well, the short of it is we can, because the watchers are kind of permission off-chain, there's no like chain that needs to coordinate them, we can arbitrarily scale the watcher set, provided that we can address that griefing vector. The other thing is, I'm thinking more about this like light client protocol that could get rid of the griefing vector altogether. And the way that might work is, say you have an update that has been settled on the destination chain already, and say that has like block height 50. What you can do is you can game theoretically assume that if nobody has called fraud on that update, that must have been a valid and honest update. And then when you get a new update, say at block height 55, if fraud is detected and it's challenged, what you can then do on the replica is default to native verification. And what I mean by that is you can send a diff of the blocks 50 to 55 and essentially prove using Merkle path against the light client block headers that the state root that the updater signed was not included in any of those blocks. And then you can deterministically prove fraud on the replica. The caveat here is I'm still thinking through this. I was talking with Arjun from Connext about it last week, and I want to run it by James and kind of think about what timeline we could add this. But the point being that because we have this optimistic system, we can explore this design space in the long run and make it more deterministic.
So 2 questions. One, so how do the fraud proofs work right now? Like, let's say I'm a watcher and I say that the operator did something malicious. How do I prove that to the destination chain?
So the fraud proofs work like this. You can prove it deterministically on the home because the home always contains the state that you're sending over. So you can basically show that the proof or the state root that the updater signed is not identical to the state root that was created by honest messages enqueued in the Merkle tree. On the replica, you cannot know whether the state root was invalid or not. That's the whole crux of the problem. And so the way that fraud is handled on the replica is applications, zaps on the replica can basically delegate permissions to watchers to say, hey, I trust you as the watcher to tell me whether there was fraud, and in the event of that, I will disconnect from the replica so I'm no longer processing messages. And I will basically suffer a liveness issue briefly, but once the channel is reset and it's connected to me, I can then begin processing these messages again.
So like every individual application would have to select which watchers they want to like can like they have to depend on to like halt.
Sorry, can you say that again?
So what would happen is any application on Ethereum, let's say, would have to say like, oh, okay, let's select this list of watchers, and these watchers, so let's say there was some fraud that happened. It was slashed on the home chain, but there's this message that was sent to a automated smart contract that will execute no matter what. So that contract needs to select a bunch of watchers that can that contract from running, right?
Yeah, so the pattern is we have cross-chain applications or ZAPs, which basically connect to the channels on both sides to send and receive messages. When the ZAP basically needs to authorize a watcher to tell them when there is suspected fraud. So the ZAP on the receiving chain, say Osmosis, does not process those messages. I just pinged James. I think he's on the call right now. So if we can get him up as a speaker, he'll do much better justice to this than me.
So then a liveness fault of that watcher that an application that they select can turn into a safety fault for that application, right? Because if they select watchers that then go down, then they could potentially
Correct. Yeah, so if you have delegated permissions to a watcher that fails to maintain liveness, then you as the ZAP on the receiving side will continue to process messages because the person you told to tell you when to disconnect is sleeping. And so that is the app is responsible for choosing a watcher or running one themselves that they know will maintain liveness in the event of fraud.
Can they choose multiple watchers?
That is a Prestwich question.
Who is currently connecting? So,
it looks like we also have someone from Wormhole here. Is it Spaceman?
Yep. You can call me Dev.
Dev?
Yep.
Pleasure to have you on.
Happy to be on. Sorry, I kind of joined halfway through, so if there are any questions or anything, I'm happy to answer.
Go ahead, Jason. Were you going to ask something?
I don't know if it's a bit off topic at the moment, but there's a couple of questions that have come from the Osmo community regarding Superfluid. If now's the time to ask those questions. Firstly, one of them that I've seen is, can we expect a full article on Superfluid staking and its features?
Yeah, we're working on one. Stevie's working on one right now, and I haven't gotten a chance to go over it yet just because we're working on code freeze, but that should be out probably by like next week.
Okay, cool. And then just like two specific questions. When I unbond my LP, will it take 14 days for Superfluid staking to unstake and then another further 14 days for the LP to unbond, or is it just 14 days for both altogether?
It'll be 14 days for both together. There is like a weird caveat that like if you start this unstaking and unbonding at the same time, which is what our front end will default to doing, it will take a single 14 days. But if let's say you're doing something fancy in the CLI, or if you have your, or like if anyone's building an alternative front end, which I know there are some people doing, if you don't start them both at the same time, but you start the unstaking first, then you actually have to wait till the unstaking is finished until you can start the unlocking of the underlying bond. So then it would have to take a minimum of like 4 weeks. You'd have to wait the first 2 weeks, and then you can start the unbonding of 2 weeks. This is just a software, not bug, but just a thing we did. It removes a lot of cases to just do it that way. But we'll probably fix that in the future. Yeah, for the most part, most users don't have them both happening at the same time.
Yeah, if you're using the website, it would just be 14 days. So 99% of the users won't have to worry about it.
All right, that's quite cool. And then there is a rumor going around about an Osmo UST pool for Superfluid. Can you clarify anything about that?
I mean, I don't exactly know how that got started, but I mean, at the end of the day, it is up to governance, right? So it's like governance gets to choose. I think it's wise to exercise caution and just start off with one pool, see how it goes. And then, we can just analyze the metrics and the data before deciding on, adding new pools. This is like one of those things that, it matters with staking, and staking is such a critical part of just, the blockchain itself. So I do think it's good to be extremely cautious with Superfluid, more so than, let's add everything to a Superfluid pool kind of situation. But that's not up to us. That's up to the Osmosis community.
Yeah, so just onto that question, will it only work with Osmo-based pools or any pools?
It will be only Osmo-based pools, and the stakeable amount will only be reflected for the Osmo amounts that are in the pool, and not the other side.
Cool. Cool, thanks.
Thanks for the questions.
Back to our regularly programmed bridge conversation.
Well, it's updates from the lab, so
I'm just trolling.
I had a question for the Wormhole team, actually. Like, how are you going to address the security concerns that everyone in the community has? Because that's got to be top of the list of concerns for everyone.
Yeah, absolutely. And so yes, we got hacked, right? But there are a couple of things that I want to address with the hack. First of all, you can read all about it through our very transparent incident report and what we're planning on tackling next. So in terms of security concerns, we have the most number of eyes that are actually looking at our code base right now. We have the highest crypto bounty, white hat bounty on Immunify for anything crypto or DeFi related. We're at $10 million. So there is a very big community of white hat hackers, gray hat hackers, et cetera, that are currently looking at our code to find those mistakes that we might have slipped by our engineers. Secondly, beyond that, one of the key features that we're adding very soon is accounting, which would limit damage on a chain to that chain itself. So in the Wormhole hack, the attacker was able to print 120K ETH and withdraw 90K ETH, would keep withdrawing ETH back onto the Ethereum chain. So the accounting mechanism is going to solve for that specific security concern. Beyond that, we're also working on a kill switch mechanism that through governance, if things are going wrong or anything our monitoring scripts tell us something wrong is about to happen, the kill switch mechanism can be triggered through governance to bring down the network on a temporary basis or until governance can be reestablished. If there are any other specific questions about any security concerns, I can address those as well.
One thing that I would like to see more bridges support, even IBC, in my opinion, to support this, is some sort of rate limiting on withdrawals. Why no more than 25% of a bridge is should be able to be withdrawn within a 24-hour period or something like that.
Yeah, in terms of rate limits and all these things, to us, all of those questions are governance questions, right? So through governance, we can have proposals for saying rate limit security concerns. We could do monitoring networks. That's one of the things that's actually planned as a security concern is monitoring networks and then variables on those monitoring networks that kick in depending on the thresholds that are set for governance.
How does wormhole governance work? Like, who's participating in this governance process?
Spaceman, I think you're muted. Sorry.
Oh, thank you. Sorry about that. Our current governance protocol, or our current governance contributors, are the 19 guardians that comprise of the network. So these are some of the biggest validators in the space. Actually, 12 of them are huge Cosmos validators. So, like, aside from being wormhole validators, they're very big validators in the Cosmos space as well. So they're the ones that are taking active steps and choosing, what we decide goes on the network and doesn't.
Can you tell us, can you tell us a little bit about, like, what is the future plans or roadmap for Wormhole? I guess it started off initially as this, like, Ethereum to Solana bridge, but then it kind of, like, evolved into this, like, larger protocol that's trying to be, like, more generalized for, like, multiple ecosystems. I guess yeah, what's, like, the end goal of something like Wormhole? And then, I guess, we're all in DeFi. I think it's okay for us to be a little bit cynical and skeptical about TradFi folks entering the space. So, what is Jump's play here? What are y'all trying to do?
Yeah, absolutely. So that question has a number of parts, and let me break that up. The first thing I want to address is I don't know if I can really qualify Jump Crypto as a TradFi network based on my time here. Like Jump Crypto is very, very, very involved in the crypto ecosystem. Like we're writing proposals on Terra, like we're doing governance metrics. We're involved in DeFi, yield farming, all sorts of stuff. Just to frame that conversation a little bit better. And then secondly, that's absolutely right. Wormhole grew from being a bridge to being something more. And that something more is a way to connect a bunch of different blockchains together through a messaging protocol. And then our bridge, which is Portal, is just one application that is built on top of that. So what success looks like for Wormhole is not total value locked, but it's actually building a protocol on which multiple apps can flourish. So we're actually working on a public roadmap that will be released very soon. And a couple of things that you'll notice on that roadmap when it's released is that we're not really looking at growing our total value locked. Like that's not our key success metric. Our key success metric is number of messages sent through our bridge or through our protocol. And that could be through cross-chain governance. Maybe you have, for example, a protocol on Solana, and you actually have the DAO governance being on Polygon or a Cosmos chain, and to be able to interact with those and being able to issue cross-chain tokens, being able to bridge assets through one place to another. So what we're really looking for are applications to build on top of our protocol, and that's the thing going forward. We want to optimize for that developer experience to being a cross-chain messaging protocol, on which one of the applications is our bridge.
The question, I've noticed that a lot of things that were formerly bridges in this space are starting to pivot into generalized messaging protocols, which give credit to IBC for kind of seeing that way ahead of time. But the market is clearly changing, and there's been a bit of an inflection point where cross-chain applications beyond just token bridging are gaining traction. And so we see this with Layer 0, Seller, IM, now Spaceman, kind of Wormhole is also making this pivot. Nomad, as well as is also a generalized messaging protocol. My question is more around the trust root. So if everybody starts sending generalized messages, then what we need to think about is what is the verification mechanism underlying these channels? So that's the area in which I would love to know what is Wormhole aspiring to be? Are you planning to switch to POS? What's the roadmap like?
Yeah, so I can't talk about our specific long-term plans just because those are still like very much, under going through governance, trying to talk to validators about what makes sense for us, what doesn't. But what I can say is that we are big fans of IBC. And so we are talking about integrating Cosmos SDK directly in terms of adding support for more transparent governance, adding support for more composability and interoperability within the Cosmos ecosystem. So that's all being there. Now, the other thing that I want to talk about is Wormhole is kind of meant to be, our optimization is that we want to be as simple as possible, and then we take whatever is gaining traction. Like if we see something that is a crypto primitive that is actually battle tested and like, you know, being used in a very positive way, we can bring that up to governance and say, hey, look, there's something better in the market that we want to replace our current verification scheme with, and we can implement that. The reason we want to stay with simple cryptography at the beginning is because we want to ensure that the stuff that we're working through is battle tested, it's been around for a while, and if we are to move to new verification schemes or new ways to verify messages, that those themselves have been battle tested.
I see Gavin here with his hand up.
Hi, thanks. Yeah, I just wanted to go back to the governance question for the kill switch. How, like, I'm just trying to imagine how like a kill switch could be using decentralized governance could be fast enough. Does Wormhole enable that?
Yeah. So right now, our governance process, I believe, goes through the Solana blockchain, which means that we can check Solana's TPS to be like, hey, you know, has there been votes going? Have the votes been submitted or not? But we're planning on switching that governance model to Cosmos SDK very soon. So, you know, that monitoring network, like the very specifics of like how fast that is, I probably wouldn't be able to give you an answer for that. Our engineering team can answer that question. So if you do have a specific on like how fast our governance is going, feel free to DM me and I'll get you that answer.
Well, this is an interesting question because you essentially can't introduce these controls without a waiting period on cross-chain messages.
I'm sorry, what was that?
This is an interesting question because you essentially can't introduce these sorts of financial controls without a waiting period on cross-chain messages.
Yes, but you can also do it on observation. So like, for example, if a message is coming into the Guardian network and the Guardian network sees that, hey, look, the message that I'm monitoring, for example, says print 50,000 ETH, looks suspicious. I want to go ahead and put a kill switch on because my monitoring scripts as a Guardian say that this is a suspicious message. So you don't have to wait for finality on both chains. You just have to wait for, oh, I just received a message.
Guardians being able to censor arbitrary messages is a natural result of any multi-sig oracle.
Well, they're not censoring a specific message because the message is going to go to all of them. But seeing a message, they can opt in to vote on the kill switch, right? So it's not necessarily censoring a specific message because the message is going to go through the gossip network of all Guardians. But they can say, oh, we have our own special monitoring system, or oh, we're sharing a monitoring system, and based on this monitoring script, the message that just came through, we think is going to harm the network. So hey, other Guardians, I'm actually going to vote to kill switch.
It's really cool to see Wormhole moving in more of a nomad direction with these kill switches. I think the main difference between what we do and what you're proposing is that the watchers, the people with the kill switch are the application, not the system.
Wait, what does that mean exactly, that the kill switch is the application?
The people who are running watchers is whoever the application designates. Any number of people that are decided by the admins of the application, by the admins of the bridge, by the admins of the governance system.
What happens if an application doesn't have any governance?
In practice, like, applications have developers, they have admins. There is no cross-chain bridge that doesn't have some sort of trusted setup, that doesn't have some sort of trusted oracle, or trusted third party. In fact, it's been, shown to be impossible to build a bridge without a trusted third party or a cross-chain messaging system in general.
Sure. So you'd agree that like the watchtowers have a similar censoring capability. The difference is that like Osmosis could get to choose those watchtowers. But like, the whole point of we could also just be running our own bridges. But the whole point was we're trying to like reduce the amount of things that Osmosis has to do related to bridges. And it's kind of nice. I'd say it as a pro that we can like outsource all of the bridge work to like, if we have to select our own watchers, that means they have to now be incentivized, and like when instead, we can allow some external system to incentivize them.
I think that the incentives for watchers are that they want the bridge to work and not fail, and that you can find tons and tons of people with that incentive. There's no need to introduce extra incentives. But
that's sort of like that's sort of the POA model of Wormhole, then, right? Basically, the Wormhole, guardians. I mean, they're called guardians for that exact reason, because these are, validators on all these major chains, and they have an incentive to not break the bridge either.
Presumably, but is that incentive always aligned with your application's needs? They have an incentive not to break Portal, the bridge that they run. Do they have an incentive not to break the bridge that you run and use? And how does that incentive to your incentive to do that?
I'm not sure I understand if you're saying that like Portal is different than the bridge that would connect to Osmosis. Like Portal would be the bridge that would connect to Osmosis.
I think that furthers the point that basically, if there's one bridge that you're using, the Guardians can choose whatever they want to do, right? The point of the app-specific delegation to watchers is the applications can decide who they want to tell them when to turn on the kill switch. Is it monolithic or is it granular?
Sure. I guess I can't speak to nomads or specific implementation of kill switches, but for Wormhole, one of the things that or design decisions that we think about and we look at are can we observe the network at a macro level, which means that when messages are coming through from chains and stuff, oftentimes when you have security guarantees, you can't really know if a specific application is under attack, whereas you might have attack vectors coming in from different applications or anything else like that. So one of the things that and again, maybe Nomad does this, maybe it doesn't, that we look at is the Guardians are able to run their own monitoring scripts and figure out on a macro level between all of the messages that are being transferred across chains if there is a possibility of fraud or any other the security risk that's happening at a macro level. And this is also seen in Chainlink's interesting anti-fraud network, or Happy, or other big anti-monitoring fraud networks. You kind of need that macro level view rather than application specific.
I don't necessarily agree with that. In essence, what we're trying to do is not take away the sovereignty of the domains that we're connecting to. No one will ever have a better incentive than Osmosis to ensure that the bridges and channels connecting Osmosis to other chains are working. No one will ever be better at that job or have a better idea of what it means to be working. There's really no reason that you should cede sovereignty to this 19-person multisig when you can run it yourself.
Wait, how are things? If two different applications on the same chain choose different watcher sets, how are the tokens that are transferred to them each fungible with each other?
Why would you have two different bridge applications on your chain if you could avoid it?
Wait, what? I thought the whole point was that applications can choose their own watcher sets. So let's say on Ethereum, you have two, Uniswap and SushiSwap, both, they want to select their own watcher sets. How are the tokens between them fungible?
You're asking about what if Uniswap and SushiSwap both run bridge applications. you're saying that SushiSwap and Uniswap both run a separate bridge, and those tokens are not fungible.
No. I'm saying that there's a single Nomad bridge, but they both have different watcher sets. Or is that what a bridge application is?
That's what an application is whatever is producing and consuming cross-chain messages.
So then in that case, when you have multiple chains, multiple applications, so then look, if we want fungibility across all these tokens, then don't all the applications have to like coordinate on building one bridge application together if we want?
Well, that's always the case. That's an unavoidable consequence of bridges. You have to choose fragmentation or expensive reunification with some risk tolerance.
But then what's the benefit? And if we want the tokens on Osmosis to be fungible with tokens on Junoswap, now we have to go coordinate with Junoswap to make sure that we have a bridge, a watchtower set that we can both agree with. And now we just gave up I thought the selling point here was that Osmosis can choose its own watcher set.
Osmosis can choose its own watcher set. Junoswap can choose its own watcher set.
But then these tokens aren't fungible with each other then.
They're fungible with each other. Watcher sets are associated with a specific instance of the application in a specific chain.
So that's my question.
Note that this is identical to the centralized multisig setup, except you just have no choice in the matter.
So I think what's happening here is the word application is overloaded. Sunny, you're asking how does so if Uniswap and SushiSwap, which are both applications deployed on a single chain, want to use synthetic token representations minted by the bridge, if that bridge is the same application, then both SushiSwap and Uniswap need to opt into the same kind of security or watchers. In this case, there's applications, SushiSwap and Uniswap, that are deployed on the same chain that are using tokens that are being minted by the cross-chain application. And in this case, the cross-chain application is the thing that will delegate its kind of security model to the watcher set, whichever watchers it wants to prefer. But the point here is that in the future, if there are other cross-chain applications, say governance applications and things beyond the token bridge, with Nomad, these different apps can delegate to different watchers, whereas in a channel with monolithic security, all of the applications have to listen to the same guardians or watcher set.
Okay, so that means for token transfers, there still need for the token transfers between Ethereum and Cosmos ecosystem, we still need to select one watcher set that everyone in Cosmos agrees to if we want fungibility.
This doesn't seem like it should be very difficult in general.
But now that means that we don't get to choose an Osmosis specific watcher set anymore.
No, you can choose the Osmosis set and let other zones that are self-sovereign choose whether or not to accept your watcher set.
I mean, yes, but realistically, we have to find a way of coordinating a set, right? I guess that's So
the only real way to coordinate among a bunch of self-sovereign zones is to establish some shelling point that's good for everybody. I suspect that Osmosis could establish a public good watcher set, and that it would be acceptable to a good number of people, especially after it had adoption.
Right, but then that would be the same as. Why would this be that different than Osmosis just choosing to run a bridge and getting everyone else in Cosmos land to use it?
Because you don't need to run the actual bridge. You just need to handle the situation where there's fraud.
I mean, how different is that, though? We still have to maintain highly live, watchtower set versus validator set.
I mean, we're talking about problems that are going to be identical for any bridge that you choose. There's no situation in which Osmosis gets to just declare that these tokens are fungible across all zones.
Maybe to your point, Sunny, like if you don't want to do the work, then the Nomad core team can run the watcher set and you can delegate it to us, right? That's
Or
functionally
part of the
equivalent.
watcher set.
Right.
Right.
This is strictly more optionality is what we're getting at. That in the future, if you do want to kind of change who you are delegating trust to, you can do that. With other systems, you are coupling the bridge builder with the people that will be securing your application.
Sure, but my point is, this doesn't seem like a benefit of Nomad specifically, because this is like this. So we actually see the same thing happening with Gravity, right? So we have the Gravity Bridge software. We have like one chain, which is like the Cosmos Gravity Bridge chain. That's like one instance of it, but then there's actually multiple instances of the Gravity Bridge software, right? There's, Umi has its own, Injective has its own, Sommelier has its own, and so I guess we're seeing a similar question play out there, whether, are we going to have fragmentation or are we going to have like one standardized bridge? But I don't see how this is like different from Nomad versus, the same thing could apply to Wormhole too, right? We could go fork the Wormhole software and like redeploy it.
Yeah, definitely. And that's what I was trying to point out a minute ago. That all of these problems are common to bridges. Would you mind muting? There's a ton of background noise. Thank you. All of these problems are common to any bridge that you choose. So given that you're going to have to face these anyway, choose the one that gives you the best optionality.
The one thing I would argue from the Wormhole side is that because of the partnerships that we have already established, we're one of the oldest deployed bridges, we have a huge amount of TVL. We have a huge amount of canonical assets that already use Wormhole. The one leg up we have is we have done the work to try to convince people to unify around the Wormhole assets. For example, Terra, which is through the Cosmos ecosystem, we are the canonical assets for UST and Luna everywhere in the ecosystem. So Wormhole UST and Wormhole Luna are the canonical assets elsewhere. So that's just, while these problems might be the same, Wormhole has a head start with trying to unify people around a common standard.
Wait, why wouldn't you use IBC for Luna?
Osmosis might. Osmosis specifically might use IBC for Luna and Terra, but there are other chains that are not IBC that still want a canonical asset that bridge across from Luna and Terra.
Is the UST on Ethereum also like Wormhole? Because I believe that there's two curve pools, one with legacy, the old shuttle UST, and the other with Wormhole UST, and I think the shuttle one is way bigger.
I don't know the size of the shuttle one, but I know that the curve pool for Wormhole UST is about 600 million.
Mm-hmm. What does bridge.terra.money use? Does it use Wormhole or shuttle?
It's using shuttle, but we're currently talking to them to decommission that and actually just use Wormhole underneath. So that is already in the works, is that they're going to be using Wormhole on bridge.terra.money instead of using shuttle. Shuttle's on its way out.
Mm-hmm. How do you plan on doing that? How does Terra plan on doing that migration? Actually, you know what? We should probably save this all for the bridge town hall next week.
I was going to say this is getting pretty in depth now. We should probably just save it for next week, and you guys should get back to Superfluid staking.
Correct. And he'll be joining us for the town hall next week, so we can also ask him questions as well.
Awesome.
Cool.
Well, I really look forward to next week's town hall. And I guess I'll see you guys next week. So thank you, Josh. Thank you, Sonny, Jacob, Jason, Nomad team, Wormhole team. I appreciate you all coming up.
Thank you.
You guys.
Thanks.
Thanks, y'all.